Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Fucking weird. Anyway, what's up, YouTube? It's your boy Hill Runner, and I'm here with another tutorial. Um, I watched my last tutorial. Turned out the intro was like super fucking long, and I just wasn't very professional. Um, is this one gonna be any better? Maybe. um, yeah, so like obviously my tutorials will get more professional, but like at this point it's just about making them, and if like taking those extra steps or thinking I have to stops me from doing them, I'd rather just start doing them and learn on the way. Um, that's the banter section over. Oh, also fucking table of contents down there. Feel free to skip this shit if your choices are, I don't know, if not skipping this will make you not watch the video, just fucking skip it. It's just banter. um, yeah. Anyway, today we are going to talk about compression. Now, compression, super fucking important. Why am I doing a video on this? Well, yeah, there's lots of fucking videos out there, but I find like, with stuff like this, sometimes it's good to get like multiple opinions. And I'll probably have some links down there for some of the sources that taught me about compression. And so I don't know, just like, it's kind of like I used to wrestle, and they always told you just get as many fucking coaches as you could, because each one of them has something that only they can teach, and they teach it the best way possible. And they may not be the best all around, but like if you can sort of collaborate the best points of many teachers, hypothetically, you could end up surpassing them. Or you could just work super hard and teach yourself, which like kind of what I'm doing. So, what is compression? Well, compression, long story short, it makes things quieter. But I guess you set yourself a threshold, and any noise that goes above your threshold, like you set your threshold in decibels, in volume, and anything that goes above that threshold gets reduced in volume. And so the thing is, it doesn't necessarily get reduced in a uniform way. Like, so you can choose the ratio. So maybe something, say something's like a decibel over top, and it's like a 1-to-1 ratio, then it'll be reduced by half. Or if it's a 1-to-2, it'll be reduced to a quarter. And the cool thing about compressors is you can set it so they don't kick in right away. So your sound passes the threshold, there's a little bit of sound at full value, and then it gets ducked. Now, why would you want to do that? Because, say you have a kick or something, the very first part of your kick is the transient, that's the punch. It's like it makes it hit hard, it makes the speakers fucking shoot air at you, and you're like, wow, oh, it's like you're getting fucking hit in the chest if you're going to, or if your party is the right sound system. And yeah, so because the fucking transient's at full value, but the rest of it gets ducked, essentially the transient is going to be louder compared to the rest of the sound, and it's going to punch more. Now the thing is, compressors also have groove. How do they have groove? Part of it is the attack, but it's also the release time. Because at some point, the compression is going to let up. And you can choose exactly when it lets up, and essentially it allows you to make things sort of pump. And so the way you utilize the groove part of it is you put the same compressor over a group, or you put the same compressor over multiple instruments, and it makes all of them sort of pump the same way. Some other functions of compressors, because they impact the groove and whatnot, some of them also distort a bit, some of them have a soft clip, but essentially they can create different emotions and like feelings. Like they can make stuff sound warmer, or they can make it sound sharper, etc. So really, there's a compressor for everything. But yeah, compressors shape your sound, pretty much because of the warmth and whatnot. And yeah, what they do is they reduce the dynamics as well, because essentially, like if like only parts of the sound go above the threshold, only those parts will be compressed, and so it can make your sound more uniform too. Because yeah, if your sound's a fucking peak and you compress it here, only the little peaky part is, or the part that passes your threshold is going to be compressed, and it makes the whole sound more uniform. And although a flat sound isn't very sexy, you can put the flat sound all the way up to like 0 decibels or something, and you'll be able to hear the entire fucking thing. That's enough fucking talking about it. Damn it, I have to pee now. Anyway, let's get into it. All right, so I literally did this entire video, and then I found out my DAW sound wasn't on, and it was just me talking. And at some point, I switched scenes on my keyboard, so it was just showing me talking and none of the stuff I was doing, and I didn't want that. But anyway, so I'm just going to show you a couple of different uses for compressors. So the first use is compressing a kick or some drums. And essentially, we want to compress it so that the transient is louder, so that it pushes more air and punches us in the chest. So let's just do it. So Ableton actually has 2 compressors. This one is modeled after analog gear. This one's modeled after digital gear. They both have their respective uses. But in general, I prefer the glue compressor. I prefer it for a few reasons. One of them is that the interface is simpler. I find this compressor is easier to understand, easier to work with. And also, it's the increments on each of the knobs are sort of limited, so it only gives me like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I can just click an option and cycle through with my arrow keys, and I really only have 6 modes. So that's bad for hyper-tailoring a sound, but it's good for just making things faster, because it really allows me to listen to every single setting and choose the best one. So also, fun fact, the reason this is called a glue compressor, because yes, it's modeled after analog gear, but the point is that you would drop this compressor on a group, and because it's a bit analog, it would give it sort of a bit of warmth and like a certain feeling. But I'll touch more on that later. So step 1, I could just compress this off the top of my head. I know that I would want like attack that isn't 0. Like I want it to be a little delayed when it kicks in, because you want the transient at full value and the rest of the song sexily shaped. But essentially, how you listen to a compressor is first you take the threshold way down, and then everything else, well, the attack and release up. I think you just have to guess at your ratio. I find I like 2 or a 10, but I'm going to go with 2. It's just gentler. It doesn't distort that much. And if you listen to the sound, I mean, like, you can't really hear it right now, but there's a little bit of fluff in the sound that, you know, it might get brought out under a bigger ratio. Or, yeah, just what I think. Anyway, so it's all set up. First rule of compression is you take the threshold way down. And so, yeah, this makes the song sound quieter, but actually it's easier to hear compression at lower volumes. So 9 times out of 10, when you're making music, you actually want to be listening at a low volume. There's a few reasons. One of them is excitement bias. So we perceive louder songs as better, even though they're just louder. So also, a big part of post-processing is making sure that your effect, whether it's on or off, doesn't change the volume, and then you can toggle on and off and listen to the character. But yeah, so compression is easier to hear at low volumes because you hear sort of just the compression. It's similar to like sometimes like when you're done your mix down, you'll turn your track to almost nothing, and then you'll start turning it up and listening to the first thing that you hear, and you'll sort of mix it at that micro low volume, and it'll allow you to say make sure that the kick and the bass are most prominent, or whatever you think is important. But yeah, so compressor, threshold all the way down, listening to just the compression, and then I'm just going to toggle all the fucking settings. So you listen to it. So yeah, I just cycled through all of them. I think it sounds best here, because it has a pump to it, but it's not... It doesn't distort, and it's not too sharp or dark. Like it's a nice mix between pumpy and sort of warm. And then you toggle the release. Ooh, that sounded kind of cool. So I don't know if you can hear the difference, but this somehow sounded more punchy, and it's like instead of da, it's like da. Because I guess like in general, the attack of a note is important, like how long it takes to reach full volume. But the release is important too. Like, does it release in time? Does it sort of fade out into nothing, or does it hit and push back? Like, what's the pulse? Because like I might have said before, compressors sort of give groove, and I think it sounded best with this here short release time. And then what you do, pull the threshold back. In general, you want between 5 and 10 decibels of compression. Or levels. I don't know if it's measured in decibels. And then I'm just going to assume maybe... I just assumed since the needle was hitting 10, I could just put it up 10. Let's see if I was right. 2.4. That was the dumbest thing ever. Okay. -2. -5. -420, -5, -4, -5. Okay, so these are now the same volume. Now, you might be thinking, hey, those don't sound like the same volume. And that's because there are multiple ways to measure volume. So automatically, Ableton measures your peak volume, and essentially, it only measures the highest part of your sound. Now, if you have a sound with very high peaks and very low troughs, Ableton is going to read just the peaks. It'll say it's at a certain volume, but the sound will be quieter because it has like a lot of dynamics. So compression is also cool because like it'll like reduce the dynamics, because if you reduce the distance between the peaks and the troughs, the song is averagely louder. So there's a couple ways to address the volume that don't have much to do with compression. You could measure in VU units. I think they're just volume units. You can measure in LUFS. And if you look online, there's plugins to measure both of them. But I'm not going to complicate it. I'm just going to look at the peak volume. But yeah. So anyway, toggled it, same volume. What do you do after? The question is, does it sound better compressed than not? So we just listen. The answer, maybe. So maybe is kind of like no. So yeah, essentially your flow, the flow for post-processing anything is you volume match, you get the sound sounding as good as you possibly can, A/B it with the original, does it sound better? If yes, leave it. If not, take down the dry wet. And so this is called parallel compression. It's where you layer a completely compressed signal with the original, and what it does is it gets you the best of both worlds, and it also gives you some sort of cohesion. So I'm just going to listen and play with a dry wet. So this is, right now, we have a choice, because I don't think it sounds better or worse with the dry wet either way. It just sounds different. So you have to ask yourself, where am I going with this song? Do I want a cold, hard kick, or do I want like a warm, softer one? So I'm going to go with 50-50. And yeah, so now we have the best of both worlds. We have that extra punchy attack, but we still have some warmth. And so now what I'm about to do is something that I personally do that you guys don't have to. But I guess at some point I realized I liked the sound of both low and high ratios. So normally I actually use 2 compressors on a track. And I just toggle the dry wets. So essentially what it gives me is 3 layers of sound. The original, 1 compressed, 2 compressed. Actually it gives me 4 layers because it's original, first compressor, second compressor, and then both compressors, essentially. Because yeah, if both of them are at 50-50, you're going to have an even 4-way split between all the compressions. So let's do high ratio, squash it, listen, and then just roll back the attack time. And yeah, so I'm just selecting it and I'm cycling through with my arrow keys. And so here, I don't know if you can hear it, but it sounds kind of wumpy, like less sculpted. It does sound sort of warm, and usually a higher attack means it's going to be more warm, but not always. So this is kind of cold and punchy, and this sounds kind of warm. Since I already have a cold and punchy compressor, I'm going to see if I can just make this a warmer one. Now I'm going to toggle the releases. And yeah, so this one, really cold. These two are kind of pumpy, like it's douche, douche, like you can sort of feel the movement. And then I think these 3 over here, in this case, kind of feel warmer. And yeah, I think I just want to go for the warmth. So also, another function in these glue compressors is the soft clip. And so essentially what soft clip does is as a wave approaches 0 decibels, a soft clipper rounds the edges. So, well, yeah, it just sort of changes the waveform to make it fit underneath. And essentially, usually it increases the harmonics, it distorts a bit, and it decreases the peaks as well. And in that case, it kind of, it makes the average volume more consistent. So if you want max warmth, I say oversampling mode, and I'm just going to listen on and off, see what sounds better. I think this sounds warmer this way. So let's just... And yeah, you can hear that wump I talked about earlier. I just need to EQ it out, but it's just a little breath. It's like, wah, wah. And I don't like the sound of it. But this is a compression video, not an EQing video. But yeah. Sounds about the same. Let's check. Minus 2.4, minus 5.3, minus 1. trying to get it exact, and it isn't quite going my way. No, 5.75, 5.3, that's pretty close. And then, yeah, now we play with the dry wet. And so right now, it's kind of distorty. I've decided I either should leave it here, or I think I'm going to take it off soft clip. Still have that wump, not super distorty. And then make sure it sounds better with both. I think it does. It sounds punchier and it sounds more sculpted. So, now it's time. We went over the second use for compression. And this, I'm just going to take these out. Control G. And yeah. Unsolo. The second use for compressors is glue compression. And that is when you stick a compressor on an entire group to give it the sort of, to make it sound like it's in the same room, and like compressors have a groove, so it all sort of pumps the same way, sort of attenuates a bit, and it just sounds fucking good. So now we have our kick in context. Just mix it a bit. And yeah, so time to glue compress. Generally, like if you're compressing over a group, I know I said the word warm a lot, but you do want your like a warmer compressor. Because usually you don't want it to sort of pump as much. You just kind of want to attenuate it a bit. But yeah, so squash it. I guess I'll just speed run this. Yeah, so if you listen to it, this makes the tone of the hi-hats change. It makes it sound like go ta, ta, ta. You know, it makes them sound like they're coming down. Whereas here, they sound like they're going straight, like ta, ta, like ta, ta, ta. Like, I don't know, all relative. And then toggle release. This sounds the quietest, but it's the least shitty. So I'm just gonna leave it there. -6, -5. -8, -5. So this compressor, this turned out completely differently than I did it last time, but this is actually sort of a cold, pumpy compressor. So I'm going to use it just a bit. I think this sort of made it sound better. So this, on this setting, it brought out the hi-hats more, but it made both the kick and the snare sort of less obtrusive. Like... yeah, and the sound just sounds sexier and more shaped. And so now the third kind of compression or the third use is putting a compressor on a synth. I'm just gonna get rid of those guys. Goodbye, beautiful compressor. I'm also just gonna get rid of all these things. Glue compressor, take you guys out. And yeah, so here we have a synth. Now, you compress synths a little differently. And what is this synth, you may ask? Let's just go into Serum. I mocked it up in like 2 seconds. This is a super saw. Saw wave with a lot of voices of unison. Play with the tune to taste, and yeah, that's a super saw. So let's compress it, and yeah, so generally you don't. So sometimes with a synth, you will have like a medium to slow attack so that the transient comes in, then you squash it. But with a synth, sometimes you can put the attack at 0, and it just sort of completely squashes it. And yeah, what you're trying to do is you're like sort of reducing the dynamics so it's not as peaky, and you just want to make it sort of sound sexier, and give it a bit of pump. So yeah, I'm just gonna assume it takes a super small attack. Oh, squash it. Yeah, so that's squashed enough. I guess I'll go through just in case. Aside from quietness, I can't actually hear a difference right now, but I'll just assume it takes a super small attack. So here, I can hear a difference. It kind of goes like, you can hear it goes ooh-ah, like I don't know, there's a bit of a stagger. Because yeah, I think I mentioned it before, but like, the attack of a song, how long it takes to reach full volume, super important, but when it releases is important too, because you can release in time. Like you can get like a nice suck back or a nice duck, or it can just go and fade off into space. Like there's all these different characters that you gotta think about. I'll also take the ratio down. This sounds kind of floaty. I'm just gonna use it like that. And then between 5 and 10 decibels. Negative 19. Negative 12. What's 19 minus 12? I think it's 7. Yeah, I don't give a fuck. Does it sound better on or off? Yeah, it sounds a little sexier. Like it's, and when I say sexier, I guess it just means it sounds shaped, right? Like, you shape the sound. Yeah, dry wet all the way, maybe. I'm gonna keep it completely compressed. And now, let's listen to it in the group. See if it sounds better out or in. Oops. Damn it. That happened last time. I just Control X, Control V'd it. No, I think it sounds better. It does sound quieter, but it sounds sexier. Like it sounds more shaped. Like, and yeah, and then the last use for compression is side chaining. So just drop some new compressors. And so yeah, I think I said it before. This one is kind of analog. It's modeled after analog. This one's kind of digital. I use this one for side chaining because I think the interface is more friendly for it. I get to see my gain reduction, and also I don't know if this one has a look ahead. Not that I can see. But yeah, so with this compressor, if you go into this sort of knee option, it looks like a knee. You can adjust your knee, but you can also adjust the look ahead. And so essentially what sidechain compression is it compresses a signal based on an input. So generally you set the input to your kick. So every time the kick comes, it compresses. And what it does is it's essentially to make a synth quieter only when the kick plays so that the kick becomes more audible. So usually where you would use sidechain is on a bass, because your kick and the bass take up the same frequencies, and you just use a sidechain to get the bass out of the way so the kick punches through. But for a high synth like this, we don't have to sidechain it. And if we do, we don't even have to use a compressor. We could use a filter instead and just roll off the low frequencies or roll off the high frequencies every time the kick comes through. But the reason I'm compressing this main synth is just because it saves headroom. Because if the volume of the kick stacks on top of the volume of the synth, it means it'll be louder every time the kick plays. And, the more uniform you make a sound, the more you can turn it up. Like if my song looked like a flat wiener, I could turn it all the ass way up to 0 dB, and everyone would be happy. Except people who said, you squashed your fucking dynamics. Anyway. Oh, I gotta check. Did I ever put this in the right scene? Yes, I did. Thank fuck. I didn't want to have to do this again. Anyway, compression, sidechain. So I actually, in this group, I didn't layer the kick and the snare. Sometimes you have a kick on every beat, and then you just put the snare on top of the kick. I left them separate. Why? I think it creates more of a 1-2 feel, sort of like a side-to-side motion. I think not layering is definitely better for dubstep and shit like that. Layering is sort of more a house trance, psytrance domain. But anyway, this is what we're going to sidechain to. And how do you sidechain? Step 1, sidechain. Audio from kick. Ratio all the way up. Attack down. Release down. Threshold all the way down. And in this case, I already said what look ahead was, I'm pretty sure. I want a higher look ahead, because essentially this means that this compressor is going to duck the sound 10 milliseconds before the kick comes in, so it creates a lot of room for the kick to come in and be heard at full volume. And for sidechaining synths and whatnot, I think a higher look ahead just sounds better. So yeah, I squash the shit out of it, and listen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with and toggle the release time. Because what I want to do, remember how I said compressors have a groove? I want the release time to have a groove. I don't want it just to stutter like, I want it to be like, like I want, I want it to sound good. So I think that sounds better than... And then one thing you can do, you can just click auto, and this lets it decide, and you just listen to see whether your release time is better than the auto one. And if the auto one is better, then maybe you just want to toggle your release time a little bit and try and get something in between. In this case, I think auto sounds better. Does it always? No. In fact, usually it doesn't. So now that I've got it squashed shit, and I got the release time where I want it, you just pull the threshold back up, and I'm trying to put the threshold at a point where there's a little bit too much compression. And then I just take the dry wet down, because then you sort of get the best of both worlds, because compression sounds good. It sounds sexy. It shapes the sound. And so I want both the compressed, sexy sound and the original, lush, beautiful, not compressed, dynamic sound. So I'll try it without actually. Yep. I think that sounds the best. Yeah, and compression shouldn't necessarily be super noticeable. Like, It's really, and it's sort of to save headroom, sort of just to make it sound sexier. But it's not really to be like an audio effect. So now let's just listen. Turn them off. And yeah, I think it sounds better with. So the last thing, compression is usually between a kick and a bass. Just like marriage is usually, but not always, between a man and a woman. Ooh. Maybe I should edit that out. Ungroup track. Let's see. Just, I made a bass here. I'm lazy. It's already got the sidechain and all this shit on it. You don't need to see me do it again. But, yeah. Summer lovin', having a blast. That's all I got. And with that, I end this tutorial.